My dad called me in a panic. His voice shook as he said, "Do not answer the door." I asked why, but all he whispered was, "Please listen." My heart dropped. A few minutes later, the doorbell rang, and then a voice outside called my name. I froze in place, too scared to move. Before I tell you the whole story of that night, make sure to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from, because this is something you need to hear. My name is Nora, and I was 22 when this happened. It was a quiet Friday evening, and I was home alone. My mom was at the hospital working a late shift, and my younger brother Eli was spending the night at a friend's house. My dad, Samuel, had taken an extra shift at work. That left me in charge of the house for the night. At first, I didn't mind. The house felt peaceful. I curled up on the couch with a blanket, a cup of tea, and the novel I had been meaning to finish for weeks. The TV hummed softly in the background, and the only sound outside was the steady buzz of cicadas. It felt like one of those rare nights where everything slowed down. Still, I couldn't help but feel a little uneasy. My dad had called earlier before heading into work and said, "Lock the doors when it gets dark, Nora. You can't be too careful." I laughed it off at the time. "Dad, this is the safest neighborhood in town. I'll be fine." He chuckled but repeated, "Do it anyway. Promise me." I had promised, more to ease his nerves than anything else. I double-checked the locks as the sun went down, not thinking twice. To me, it was just another example of Dad worrying too much, the way he always did. But as the hours passed and the house grew darker, the quiet started to feel heavier. Every creak in the walls made me glance toward the door. Every gust of wind outside made me grip my book tighter. I tried to shake the feeling off, reminding myself I was safe. I didn't know then that my dad's warning wasn't just paranoia. It was a lifeline, and I was about to find out why. The call came just as I was turning a page in my book. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, and when I saw Dad's name flashing on the screen, I smiled. He usually called when things were slow at work just to check in, but the moment I answered, I knew this wasn't one of those calls. His voice wasn't calm or casual. It was sharp and shaky, like he had just run a mile. "Nora, listen to me carefully," he said. "Do not answer the door." The sudden fear in his tone made my stomach twist. I sat up straighter on the couch. "What? Why? What's going on?" He lowered his voice, almost a whisper. "Just please, listen to me. Lock every door, every window, and stay away from the front of the house. Don't let anyone see you." I stood up, my heart thudding. "Dad, you're scaring me. Tell me what's happening." "I can't explain right now," he said, his voice breaking. "Just promise me you won't open this door for anyone, no matter what they say, not even if they call your name." A chill ran down my spine. I had never heard my dad sound like that before. He was always the strong one, the protector. Hearing fear in his voice made the walls of the house suddenly feel thinner, weaker. I swallowed hard. "Okay, I promise." The line went quiet for a second, and then he whispered, "Good girl. Stay quiet. I'll be home soon." Then he hung up. I stood there, gripping my phone, my heart racing. My dad never panicked, so if he was this scared, it had to be serious. I quickly moved through the house, checking the locks. The front door was already secured, the sliding back door latched, and the windows closed. Still, I tugged at each one just to be sure. My hands shook as I pulled curtains closed and turned off a few lights, making the house feel darker. That was when the doorbell rang. The sound was so sharp it cut through the silence like a knife. I froze, my body refusing to move. My dad's warning echoed in my head. "Do not answer the door." The bell rang again, longer this time, followed by 3 slow knocks. My heart pounded in my chest as I tiptoed closer to the hallway that faced the front door. I didn't dare go all the way. Instead, I pressed my back against the wall, holding my breath. Then I heard it. A voice. Low at first, then clearer. "Nora, I know you're in there. Open up." My blood ran cold. My name. Whoever was outside wasn't just a stranger guessing. They knew me. I covered my mouth with my hand, terrified that even the sound of my breathing would give me away. My legs felt like stone, but my mind was racing. How do they know my name? How do they know I'm home? The voice came again, firmer this time. "Nora, open the door. We just want to talk." Every instinct screamed at me to stay hidden. My dad's voice replayed in my head. "Not even if they call your name." Whoever was out there, he knew they would try this. The knocking grew louder, more impatient. I jumped with every thud. Then the doorknob rattled, shaking back and forth as the person outside tested it. The lock held, but I pressed myself harder against the wall, silently praying they wouldn't try harder. I thought about calling Mom, but she was at work and wouldn't be able to leave. My brother was at a sleepover across town. That left only Dad, but I had just spoken to him. He said he was coming, but how long would that take? I decided to crouch low and crawl toward the living room window, careful not to make the floor creak. Slowly, I peeked through a tiny gap in the blinds. My breath caught. A man stood on the porch. I didn't recognize him. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark jacket with the hood pulled up. His face was shadowed, but I could see his lips moving as he muttered my name again. My hands shook so badly, I almost dropped my phone. I quickly dialed Dad back, whispering, "There's someone at the door. He's saying my name." Dad's voice came through, urgent and low. "I know. Don't let him see you. Stay hidden. The police are already on their way. I called them before I called you." "The police?" I whispered. My stomach tightened. "Dad, who is he? How does he know me?" There was silence on the line for a second. Then Dad said, "Just hold on. Trust me. Don't move until the police get there." The man outside knocked again, harder this time, his voice louder, more aggressive. "Nora, come on. I'm not leaving until you open this door." I ducked down, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst. I gripped the phone to my ear and whispered, "Dad, please hurry." The knocking turned into pounding, and the door rattled in its frame. I could hear his footsteps pacing back and forth on the porch, then circling toward the window. I crawled backward on the floor, pressing myself against the couch, desperate not to be seen. Every sound in the house felt deafening, the tick of the clock, the creak of the wood. I stayed as still as possible, waiting for something to happen, every second stretching longer than the last. And then, suddenly, the pounding stopped. The silence was even worse. The sudden silence felt louder than the pounding. My whole body tensed as I sat crouched on the living room floor, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles were white. For a moment, I thought maybe the man had left, but something in me knew better. People who knock like that don't just walk away. I whispered into the phone, "Dad, it's quiet now." I don't hear him. My dad's voice came back, low but firm. "Don't be fooled. He's probably still there. He might be trying to catch you off guard. Stay low. Stay out of sight." I tried to steady my breathing, but every nerve in my body felt like it was on fire. I thought of Mom at work, Eli laughing at his sleepover, completely unaware of what was happening at home. And I thought of Dad, stuck miles away, doing everything he could but not here yet. That's when the fear shifted into something else, a desperate determination. If I was going to get through this, I couldn't just sit frozen. I had to do something. I crawled slowly toward the back of the house, keeping my body low. My socks slid across the hardwood floor as I moved, careful not to make noise. Every step felt like it took years. I reached the kitchen and pulled open the drawer where Dad kept his old baseball bat. The wood was smooth and heavy in my hands. Just holding it gave me a sliver of courage, even though my hands were trembling. The phone buzzed again. It was a text from Dad this time. "The police are close. Just hold on. Don't do anything risky." I wanted to listen. I really did. But as I peeked around the corner toward the front of the house, I saw the shadow move across the curtains. He was still there. My heart skipped. Then the shadow grew taller, closer. The man was on the porch, leaning toward the window. I ducked back, just in time, my chest heaving. I realized then that if he managed to see me, if he confirmed I was alone, things could get much worse. My dad's warning made sense now. He didn't want the man to know I was vulnerable. That meant my only choice was to stay hidden, quiet, and prepared. I crawled back into the hallway and shut myself into the downstairs bathroom, locking the door as quietly as I could. It was small, with only one frosted window high on the wall, but it felt safer than the open living room. I sat on the cold tile floor, clutching the bat in one hand and the phone in the other. My breathing was shallow, but I forced myself to stay calm. Minutes passed like hours. Then I heard it again. His voice, louder this time, angrier. "Nora, I know you're in there. Open this door right now." His fist banged against the wood, shaking the frame. I pressed my free hand over my mouth to stifle the sob that threatened to escape. My dad's voice rang in my head. "Do not let him know you're there. Do not give him what he wants." Through the thin walls, I heard him pacing again. His heavy footsteps scraped across the porch, then onto the gravel path by the side of the house. My blood ran cold. He wasn't giving up. He was circling, looking for another way in. I whispered to the phone, "Dad, he's trying the sides of the house." "I know," Dad said quickly. "Stay put. The police are only a couple minutes away. Just don't move." But every creak outside made me imagine him breaking a window, forcing his way in. My grip tightened on the bat, sweat slicking my palms. I pictured what I would do if the bathroom door burst open. I wasn't sure if I could swing hard enough, but at least I wouldn't be defenseless. Then came the sound that made my heart stop, the rattle of the back door handle. He was testing it. He moved slowly, deliberately, as though trying to find the weakest point in the house. I wanted to scream, to run, but I stayed rooted to the floor, whispering prayers under my breath. The seconds dragged. Every thump and scrape made me jump. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Dad. "Police are turning onto our street. Just hold on, Nora. They'll be there any second." I shut my eyes, clinging to that message like it was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. I told myself over and over, just a little longer, just a little longer. And then the sound outside shifted. The pounding stopped. The footsteps grew frantic. For a brief moment, silence returned. Then, faintly, I heard sirens in the distance. They grew louder, closer, until the wail filled the neighborhood. Relief washed over me, but it was laced with fear. Because before the sirens reached the house, I heard his voice one last time, low and furious, right outside the window. "This isn't over." My entire body went cold. The bathroom door felt thinner than paper. The house didn't feel like protection anymore. I pressed my forehead against my knees, clutching the bat, waiting for the moment the sirens stopped outside and heavy boots would finally replace his. That was the turning point. I knew then that this wasn't just about surviving the night. It was about facing the truth of what my dad had feared all along. Someone was after me, and I couldn't afford to ignore the danger any longer. The sound of sirens grew louder, their wailing bouncing off the houses on our quiet street. I stayed crouched on the bathroom floor, clutching the baseball bat, afraid to breathe too loudly. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it might break my ribs. I didn't dare move until I was sure the police were really there. Then I heard it, the screech of tires stopping outside, car doors slamming shut, and heavy boots hitting the pavement. Flashing blue and red lights streaked faintly across the frosted bathroom window. Relief rushed through me, but it was tangled with fear. Was it too late? A man's voice shouted outside, firm and commanding. "Police!" Step away from the house. For a moment, there was only silence. Then came a crash of movement, the sound of someone running through the gravel on the side of the house. More voices erupted. "Stop! Get on the ground!" I pressed myself tighter against the wall, my hands shaking as the chaos unfolded outside. There was a loud scuffle, boots pounding against the porch, a sharp yell of resistance, then the unmistakable snap of metal handcuffs being secured. My whole body sagged in relief. I waited until the knock came at the front door, this time steady and official. "Police, it's safe to come out." Even then, I hesitated. My dad's voice still echoed in my mind. "Don't open the door." But when I peeked out the bathroom window again, I saw the flashing lights washing over the street and the outline of uniformed officers. My shaking legs finally carried me out of the bathroom, through the darkened hallway, and toward the front door. When I opened it, 2 officers stood there. One of them gave me a reassuring nod. "You're okay now, miss. We've got him." I stepped onto the porch, my knees weak. At the end of the walkway, I saw the man who had been pounding on my door. His hood had been pulled back during the struggle, revealing a rough face, eyes wild and furious. He was pinned to the ground by 2 other officers, his hands cuffed tightly behind his back. Even from where I stood, I could hear him muttering angrily, straining against the hold. The sight made my stomach twist. One officer guided me a few steps away from the porch. Did he make it inside? I shook my head quickly. No. He tried the doors and windows, but they were locked. He just kept calling my name. The officer gave a small nod. "Good. You did the right thing not opening up." Before I could respond, headlights swung into the driveway. My dad's truck. He jumped out before the engine even finished shutting off, sprinting toward me with panic in his eyes. He pulled me into a hug so tight it knocked the air out of me. "Thank God you're okay," he whispered, his voice breaking. I clung to him, tears finally spilling down my cheeks. "Dad, who is he? Why was he here?" My dad looked at the officers, then back at me. He sighed, his face heavy with guilt. "I should have told you sooner. That man, he used to live in this neighborhood years ago. He was bad news then, always in trouble. Last week he showed up at my work, asking about our family. He was angry, saying I owed him something. I didn't think he would actually come to the house until I saw how unstable he was." The words sank into me slowly. "So he knew us?" Dad nodded grimly. "Enough to know your name, enough to be dangerous. When I realized he might try to come here, I called the police first, then you. I just needed you to stay hidden until they got here." I felt a shiver race down my spine as I looked at the man again, still struggling against the officers. The thought of what might have happened if I had opened the door made me sick. The officer beside us added, "He'll be charged with attempted burglary, trespassing, and making threats. You're safe now, but if you hadn't listened to your father, this could have ended very differently." I tightened my grip on Dad's arm. For the first time, I realized just how close I had come to real danger. My dad's frantic warning hadn't been paranoia. It had been the only thing standing between me and disaster. As the police car pulled away with the man inside, I leaned against my dad, my body still trembling, but finally able to breathe again. The flashing lights faded down the street, leaving our house quiet once more. But it wasn't the same quiet I had enjoyed earlier that night. This was the heavy quiet that comes after chaos, when you know your world has just changed. Dad looked down at me, his eyes filled with both relief and sorrow. "I'm sorry, Nora. I should have told you everything sooner." I shook my head. "You saved me. If you hadn't called, if I hadn't listened." My voice trailed off, but the truth hung between us. His warning had made all the difference. That was the moment it hit me. Sometimes the scariest thing isn't the knock at the door. It's realizing how close you came to opening it. The night the police took the man away, our home no longer felt like the safe place it had always been. The walls looked the same, the locks were still strong, and the familiar creak of the stairs echoed as I climbed them. But something inside me had shifted. I had stared danger in the face, and even though the man was gone, the memory of his voice calling my name lingered like a shadow. For the first few days after the arrest, I jumped at every unexpected sound. A car slowing down outside made my heart leap. The doorbell ringing, even if it was just the mail carrier, sent me straight back to that moment of panic. I found myself double-checking every lock 3, sometimes 4 times a night before I could even think about sleeping. My dad noticed, and one evening as we sat at the kitchen table, he placed his hand over mine and said, "It's going to take time, Nora, but you're safe now. You need to believe that I wanted to believe it." Deep down, though, I knew my sense of safety had been broken in a way that couldn't be patched up overnight. That's when Dad decided we needed to make changes, not just for me, but for all of us. He installed new deadbolts, added motion sensor lights outside, and put cameras at the front and back doors. Eli came home from his sleepover and noticed immediately. "What's with all the security?" he asked. My mom answered softly, "Because protecting this family means never taking chances again." Slowly, I began to feel a little stronger. The sight of the cameras and locks didn't just remind me of what happened, they reminded me that we were doing something about it. Each step we took to secure our home was a step toward healing. Still, the emotional scars were harder to repair. One evening, I sat with my sister Eli in the living room. He was younger, but his curiosity had no limits. "So, what really happened? Why did Dad call you like that?" he asked. For a moment I hesitated, but then I decided he deserved to know. "Someone dangerous came to the door. Dad knew he might show up, and he warned me just in time." Eli's eyes widened. "And you didn't open it?" I shook my head. "No, and that's why I'm okay." He nodded seriously, and though he didn't say much after that, I could tell the story stuck with him. In a way, sharing it with him made me feel braver. I wasn't just the girl who hid in the bathroom. I was someone who had faced fear and made the right choice. The biggest shift came when I sat down with my mom a week later. She had been so busy working the night it all happened, and I knew she carried guilt for not being there. As we folded laundry together, she finally said, "I should have been home. I should have protected you." I put the clothes aside and looked at her. "Mom, you don't need to feel guilty. Dad's warning saved me, and so did everything you've taught me. I knew to stay calm, to stay quiet, and to trust the people who love me. That's what kept me safe." She hugged me tightly, tears in her eyes. That conversation was a turning point for both of us. I realized then that the danger hadn't just threatened me. It had shaken our whole family, but it had also drawn us closer. We spoke more openly about fears, about instincts, about listening to each other. I learned that survival isn't just about being strong on your own. It's about leaning on the people who care for you. As the weeks turned into months, the memory of that night grew less sharp, though it never completely faded. I carried it with me as a reminder. I used to think my dad was paranoid, always warning me about locking up and being careful. Now I understood that his instincts came from love, and from experience I couldn't yet see. The lesson I learned is one I'll never forget. Sometimes, trusting the people who care about you, even when you don't fully understand why, is the difference between safety and danger. Looking back, I realized that I had grown stronger through the fear. I no longer brushed off caution as paranoia. I paid attention to small warnings, to instincts that used to feel like overthinking. Most importantly, I understood that fear doesn't make you weak, it makes you aware. Listening to that fear instead of ignoring it can save your life. The house feels safer now, but more than the locks and cameras, it's the bond with my family that gives me real security. We know now that no matter what happens, we'll face it together. And that's what I want to leave you with. Trust the people who care for you. Don't dismiss their warnings. Sometimes they see danger before you do, and listening can change everything. Thank you for staying with me through this story. What would you have done if your dad told you not to answer the door? Comment below where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that will keep you thinking long after they're over.